I love my husband, but sometimes I just wish he would disappear from the room for a few hours. If you've ever thought that, or simply nodded quietly when someone else said it, this video is for you. There's a quiet truth that few dare to say out loud. The longer a woman lives with one man, the more she begins to feel like she's living with a stranger. Not because she's changed too much. Not because she's asking for more than she deserves. But because expectations, needs, and quiet disappointments have grown over the years. Welcome to Life in Words. We tell real stories from real hearts so you can feel seen, heard, and gently healed. If you care about emotional well-being, lasting relationships after 60, and finding deeper meaning every day, please subscribe to this channel. You won't want to miss the stories that could matter most to you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. We read every single one. Now, let's go deeper into 8 quiet but deeply practical reasons why so many women after 60 start to feel emotionally distant from the man they once couldn't imagine living without. Reason 1. When what used to be charming becomes tiring. In her younger years, Linda believed in something very simple. As long as we love each other, we'll be happy forever. And during the early years of marriage, she lived by that. Her husband, Harold, was clumsy but sweet. He often forgot his keys, spilled his coffee, told the same joke over and over. But he never forgot to hug her goodnight, and he always offered her the last bite at dinner. Those were the little things that made Linda smile. Back then, she thought they were cute. But now, in their 60s, those same things make her sigh. Harold hasn't changed much, but Linda has. She's no longer the 30-year-old who found everything amusing. Now, she needs something different. A real partner. Someone who listens, someone who shares the load. Someone who walks beside her in the everyday. But Harold still forgets the lights, still asks her to repeat things. And every time it happens, Linda feels frustrated, then guilty. Why am I upset at the man I chose to grow old with? She wonders. The answer is simple. She has changed. And that is completely natural. Life at this age is no longer about romantic dinners or sweet promises. It's about unpaid bills, late nights caring for the grandkids, aging parents, and trying to rediscover herself after years of giving. The woman Linda is now doesn't just want love. She wants to be understood. Not just someone who says, "I love you," but someone who truly hears her. Harold hasn't gotten worse. He's just standing still. But Linda has moved forward to a new place within herself. What used to be charming now feels careless. Repetition makes things feel tired. The love is still there, but expectations have deepened. And if both people don't grow together, don't match pace, the distance will grow. If you've ever sighed at something your husband still does the same way after all these years, leave the number 1 in the comments. That small number might remind someone else they're not alone. And this isn't even the hardest part. Because what truly wears a woman down often begins with the smallest, most familiar things. Let's keep going. Reason 2. The quiet wait no one talks about. Every morning, Carol is the first to wake up. She makes breakfast. She washes the dishes. She checks her husband's pills. She calls to check in on her aging mother-in-law. And she mentally notes that the power bill is due today. It's all routine, all expected, all silent. Meanwhile, her husband Paul sips his coffee and reads the paper. "Hey," he asks, "have you seen my blue shirt?" Carol doesn't answer. She just sighs in her mind. Can't he see I'm spinning in circles here? This is not rare. Millions of women over 60 are still the ones running the household day in and day out. From caregiving, to cooking, to remembering every doctor's appointment, and planning every meal. It's a full-time job, with no paycheck, no days off, and very little recognition. Once, Carol tried to speak up. "I feel like I'm doing everything on my own," Paul chuckled. "You've always been so good at keeping things organized." "I'm not great at that stuff. He meant no harm." But those words cut deep. Because when responsibilities aren't shared, women don't just feel tired. They feel invisible. Not a partner, but a housekeeper, a caregiver, a quiet carrier of everything. And that weight builds, little by little, until one day she stops talking. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she believes saying it won't change a thing. If you've ever felt lonely inside your marriage, even with someone right beside you, leave the number 2 in the comments. It might mean more than you realize. Because this kind of imbalance doesn't show up in big arguments. It shows up in who remembers the insurance bill, in who does what without being asked, in who checks in and who gets checked out. When no one sees it, a woman can lose herself in the very home she built. But the issue isn't just about chores. There's something deeper still. Something that slips away slowly when emotional closeness begins to fade. Let's keep going. Reason 3. When the body changes, emotions change too. Back in the day, Eleanor loved those quiet evenings. Sitting next to her husband, watching a movie, sharing a laugh. His hand gently holding hers as the lights dimmed. It made her feel safe, cared for, close. But lately, all of that has faded. What once brought her comfort now makes her tense up. Sometimes even uncomfortable. And her husband Greg noticed. But instead of asking, instead of reaching out, he quietly pulled away. That's how the distance started. Not with harsh words, but with silence. After the age of 55, a woman's body begins to shift in ways that feel unfamiliar. Menopause, dryness, insomnia, hormonal changes, aches in the joints. These aren't just physical issues. They touch everything. How she feels, how she moves, how she wants to connect. Eleanor once tried to speak up. "My body feels different," she said. "It scares me a little." Greg looked confused. "I thought you just weren't interested anymore." So instead of reconnecting, they both pulled back. Not out of anger, but because they didn't know how to cross the space between them. And silence grew in that space. Physical distance doesn't only live in the bedroom. It seeps into everyday life. It dulls affection. It chips away at the sense of being wanted, loved, understood. Sometimes all a woman needs is a kind compliment, a soft gaze, a gentle touch. But she might not ask for it. Because she's unsure, because she's tired, because she doesn't know how to explain the shift. And men might misread that silence. They think she's no longer interested. But the truth is, she still craves closeness, still wants connection, just in a softer, more thoughtful, more tender way. Eleanor never stopped loving Greg. She just stopped feeling close. Because her needs changed, and he didn't notice. If you've ever felt distant from your partner, not because the love is gone, but because your body and soul started asking for something new, leave the number 3 in the comments. Your voice might be the comfort someone else is quietly waiting for. Because sometimes what women need most isn't to be touched. It's to be truly understood. And when silence replaces closeness, love doesn't disappear in anger. It simply steps back in quiet retreat. But the most painful part? It's not the silence itself. It's when you finally speak and no one really listens. Let's continue. Reason 4, what's not said is what hurts us most. That morning, Julia stood at the kitchen sink washing the dishes after breakfast. Her husband Peter was in the living room, reading the newspaper, just like always. She called out gently, "Could you help me clear the table?" Peter didn't look up. "I'll do it later," he said. But later never came. There were no raised voices. No arguments. Just another small request quietly ignored. And something cracked a little inside Julia. Marriages don't usually fall apart because of big, dramatic fights. They fade in silence, in the tiny things that are overlooked, in needs that are dismissed, in the daily moments that no one thinks matter, until they do. When a woman feels unheard, she slowly stops speaking. Not because she's empty inside, but because she no longer believes her voice will make a difference. Julia tried again another time. "If I don't remind you, will you remember Mom's doctor appointment today?" Peter shrugged. "I'm busy. You're better at remembering those things." He didn't mean to hurt her. But those words made her feel alone. As if she was carrying everything, even in a marriage. It's not the loud moments that break love. It's the quiet erosion. The tiny cuts from being brushed off. The emotional labor that never gets acknowledged. Worse than fighting is withdrawal. When a wife no longer shares, it's not because everything's fine. It's because she's stopped hoping for change. If you've ever spoken out and felt like your words went nowhere, leave the number 4 in the comments. Even one person saying, "I've been there," can bring comfort to someone who's starting to lose hope. Sometimes, saving a relationship doesn't begin with big changes. It starts with something small. "I hear you. I see you." But as women grow older, they start asking themselves a deeper question. Am I truly happy? Let's move to the next part. What happens when she looks inward and no longer sees her husband standing beside her? Reason 5. When a woman rediscovers herself, but no longer sees her husband beside her. After the kids left home one by one, Nancy felt a strange stillness settle into the house she'd spent over 30 years building. No more rushing through school schedules. No more balancing dinners between work and bedtime. And for the first time in years, she had time. Time to sit. Time to think. Time to breathe. Nancy picked up old books she had once left unfinished. She signed up for an evening painting class at the community center. She even tried yoga, something she used to think was a little indulgent. And somewhere in those quiet moments, Nancy realized something that made her heart ache. She had lost herself. In being a mother. In being a wife. In being everything for everyone. She had forgotten she was also a woman. With passions. With dreams. With a soul that longed for more. But what shook her most wasn't that rediscovery. It was looking across the table, at the man she had once loved so deeply, and realizing they were standing on opposite sides of life. She asked herself, do we still have anything in common? Does he even know who I am now? And if I grow, will he grow with me or stay behind? Many women in midlife don't walk away from marriage because they've stopped loving. They drift because they no longer recognize themselves in the relationship. It's not about being left. It's about feeling alone, while someone else stands right there. If you've ever had that quiet moment when you realized you've grown, but your partner hasn't, leave the number 5 in the comments. You are not alone in that feeling. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person to start moving. And if the other is willing to follow, they can find a new rhythm together. A more equal, more thoughtful, more loving rhythm that honors who they are now. But emotional distance isn't always caused by change. Sometimes it's about what's missing. Like a glance, a smile, a simple look of love that disappears without a word. Let's keep going. Reason 6. When loving glances disappear. One crisp autumn morning, Susan stood in front of her bathroom mirror. At 68, she saw the gentle lines around her eyes, the soft sag of her cheeks, and the silver threading through her hair. She wasn't upset. She accepted the changes. She honored them. What hurt her was the silence. Her husband, Robert, no longer looked at her the way he used to. No more lingering glances. No more casual compliments. No spark in his eyes when she entered the room. Just quiet. And routine. For a woman who once felt like the center of her husband's world, that silence feels like heartbreak. Yes, age changes us all. But love isn't just about how we look. It's about how we make each other feel. Seen, valued, wanted. When Robert stopped expressing that, Susan began to question. Am I still attractive? Am I still loved? Or have I become too familiar to even notice? Affection doesn't always mean intimacy. It's in the smallest gestures. A hand resting on hers. A smile shared over morning coffee. A soft word before bed. When those things vanish, a woman doesn't just feel old. She feels invisible. Susan didn't need to be 30 again. She just needed to feel like Robert still saw her. Not out of habit, but with heart, with attention, with love. If you've ever wished your partner would truly see you again, leave the number 6 in the comments. Because you are still worthy of being seen, and so many others feel the same way. But fading affection isn't the only thing weighing down relationships. In many homes, there's another quiet pressure building. A pressure that doesn't just tire the body, but also the bond. Let's talk about it next. Reason 7. When financial pressure slowly wears down, the bond. Patricia used to be the one who brought joy into weekends. She filled the house with laughter, planned little outings, and dreamed big dreams with her husband, Walter. They used to joke over coffee, about their retirement home by the lake, about vacations they'd take once life slowed down. But these days, Patricia's thoughts are filled with only one thing: money. At 65, she feels a heavy weight settle in her chest each morning. Medication costs, monthly bills, her mother-in-law's care, groceries that never seem to last, and savings that no longer feel enough. She doesn't laugh as easily, doesn't sleep as deeply. The dreams have faded, and the silence has grown. What hurts most isn't just the numbers. It's that Walter seems to not notice. Or worse, he avoids it. Whenever she brings up money, he waves it off. Things will work themselves out, he says. But they don't. And she knows it. And she feels it. Alone. Patricia doesn't expect Walter to fix everything. She just needs him to sit down, to look her in the eyes, to say, I see what you're carrying. Let's figure this out together. That's what partnership means. But when one person avoids the burden and the other bears it all, the imbalance turns into distance. Quiet resentment builds, and the weight grows heavier with each passing day. If you've ever felt like you're the only one worrying about your family's future, leave the number 7 in the comments. Even a simple comment can remind someone else that they're not alone in that weight. Patricia didn't need someone to take it all away. She just wanted to not carry it by herself. Love isn't only about sharing happiness. It's about sharing what's hard, like aging, like finances, like fear. But beyond the bills, beyond the silence, there's one more truth. What women want most, especially later in life, is not perfection. It's respect. Let's move to the final part. Reason 8. When love fades without respect. Deborah, at 66, was no longer the wide-eyed young bride she once was. She had lived through real life, raising children, paying bills, caring for aging parents, giving more than she ever thought she could. And now she knew exactly what she needed from her marriage. Respect, balance, recognition. Not flowers, not fancy dinners, but to be heard, to be treated as an equal, to feel like her thoughts mattered. Her husband, Dennis, still loved her. But he loved her in the old way. He believed he was doing enough. But Deborah didn't feel seen. When she shared a concern, he brushed it off. When she spoke up about her needs, he'd chuckle. "You worry too much." She didn't want to be humored. She wanted to be understood. She felt like a shadow in her own home. Always there, always giving, always holding things together. But rarely thanked, rarely acknowledged, rarely asked, "How are you really doing?" When love no longer comes with respect, it becomes fragile. It loses warmth. It slowly fades away. Dennis wasn't trying to hurt her. He simply hadn't noticed that the woman standing before him wasn't the same one from 30 years ago. She had changed. She had grown. She had earned the right to be treated not just with love, but with dignity. If you've ever felt like the only one carrying the emotional weight in your relationship, leave the number 8 in the comments. You're not asking for too much. You're asking to be seen. Because love, in its truest form, isn't just affection. It's fairness. It's acknowledgement. It's choosing to say, "You matter, I'm grateful you're here." All 8 of these reasons are not about blaming. They are about seeing more clearly, feeling more deeply, and maybe stepping a little closer before the distance becomes too wide to cross. Let's take one final moment to reflect. Conclusion: love doesn't vanish. It simply changes shape over time. And if we don't stop to notice, what's left after all the years together might be silence, might be distance. We've walked through 8 deeply practical reasons. Emotional shifts, unspoken responsibilities, physical disconnect, fading affection, and above all, the absence of respect. None of these begin with drama. They start quietly, in the things we don't say, in the things we always do alone, in the glances that stop happening, in the hope that quietly slips away. But here's the truth. If we understand the why, we can still change the how. Marriage at any age can be renewed. If both people are willing, if both take one small step, to listen, to adjust, to grow side by side. You don't need perfection. You need presence. You need someone who shows up, not out of habit, but out of care, out of choice, out of love, out of respect. If you've been in a long-term relationship and ever felt distant, please don't carry it all inside. Leave the number 9 in the comments, or share just one part of your story. You never know. Your words may be exactly what another woman needed to read today. And if this video spoke to you, please subscribe to Life in Words. Every week, we bring you real stories to help you live deeper, feel stronger, and age with grace, purpose, and connection. Thank you for listening. And remember, happiness is a choice. But it's a choice that takes two. Two people who choose to care, to try, to keep showing up. We'll see you in the next video.